What's coming off around here?
If you guys playing railroad anymore today? There's a landslide, a new cut.
Well, I was going to put the base for the two-stall engine house onto the foam surface of the benchwork. And recall, if you will, that in a previous episode I mentioned that this base is actually warped. It's become warped despite the fact that I coated it with shellac in order to prevent it from warping. So I'm pondering that, well, my ponderance was that I could take this piece of plywood that I bought, was the maple plywood, and that I could, I just trusted that plywood was going to be stable. And, because it's maple. I don't know. I just thought it was a much better quality wood and that it would have much more of a rigidity and retention of its shape. But it didn't. It warped. And it warped just like this. So, okay. I guess I was given with the thought that it must be an inescapable reality that wood warps. Well, then how do modelers deal with that? So this was the original base, and the reason why I didn't want to use it was, I thought it was too thick. Although now I discovered that it's exactly the same thickness as the maple plywood that I purchased, but also it was warped. And it had a nice little toggle in it as it was going back and forth. Anyway, what I've decided to do is I've taken lead weights and I've placed the plywood. I'm going to move it over here so you can see it. Hopefully you can see some of it. And I placed the plywood on a flat surface with these weights in the corners that were cupped up. And I guess I went on a jihad against plywood warpage because I went onto the internet and I started searching everywhere for it now. So these same answers come up over and over, is that it's moisture and it's temperature variations and humidity changes. So you can't control any of that. And I'm in a basement, I have heat, but there's a 10-degree swing down here at least from the baseboard heaters. And the moisture is a function of whatever's happening. Right now it's wintertime, the air's cold, so there's very little moisture in the air. And so it would probably be much drier. And then there's one other feature about this plywood I bought. The maple plywood is only maple, in my estimation, as far as the laminates on the top and the bottom. There's real thin laminates on either side of it. And the piece, whatever goes in between, looks like it's some kind of manufactured material. It was glued together from, looks like sawdust. It could be. But anyway, what I'm thinking, and given the hints that I got by doing the research on the internet, is that if I coat this, the weights will force it back to being flat. It's forced. But the grain, or the fibers in the board itself have expanded or contracted in such a way that in the total distribution of the forces of those changes, it's caused the entire structure to change shape. So the trick is to get it to stop, or at least seize itself into a position. And one master carpenter was saying that what he does with his wood is he coats it with a stain and then he puts a urethane on it. So I can do that. And I think the stain, he said, is important because it penetrates into the fibers of the wood. And as long as I keep the wood flat, I'm thinking, okay, maybe that'll force the wood to at least not warp more. So I'm going to leave the weights on to force it flat. I'll remove the silly when Precision Matters Maplewood label, and I'm going to stain the area that I can get to with the weights on. And then I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to flip it and then place the weights on the opposing corners so I still force it flat. And then I'm going to stain again. Then I'm going to remove the weights. I know it's kind of tedious, but I got to get this. I got to get this done, and I just can't stand the idea that this thing's going to be sitting there going up and down and you know, it's going to mess up my model bad. So I need a good base, and so that's where I'm headed. And maybe, you know, in all of this, maybe something can be learned by going through the experiments of the coatings and the weights, and we'll see how that works out. Well, I've allowed the plywood to remain in this position with the weights to flatten it out for approximately 2 weeks. And I know that's a long time, but I've just been a bit hesitant to start a process that I don't have confidence will work. But I want to get this thing going and try and find out if it works. I mean, it is an experiment, so let's see what we can do. So put some of the, by the way, the product I'm using is it's a Valspar product. It's called Transparent One Coat Exterior Stain and Sealer. So if it's a sealer, we'll see how that works. I gotta confess that a lot of my hesitancy to start this little activity is because of a certain amount of frustration and doubt that it will work, but I'm going to do it, and we'll find out. We'll all find out what happens to the plywood once this gets put on there. The question to ask is, will it remain flat? And, you know, given that, we'll proceed to find out. All right, this is nasty, stinky stuff. So, stain. Oh, I forgot. Before I do that, I'll put that back there. Hold that. I'll reach over here and get this guy. Take that stupid thing off, if it will. Uh-oh. Another unforeseen difficulty. That thing doesn't want to come off. Great. Just great. Well, I don't want to stain over this, and I don't want it on there. Why would they put a label on something that can't be removed? Let's see what we can do with this. Oh, that's just annoying. Okay, well, after about 15 minutes of tedious scraping, I got the label off, but that's still a big patch of glue. What the heck? There's still a big patch of glue right there, so, oh gosh, I guess. So I got a little sandpaper and just do a little sanding and clean that glue off the wood. See, I'm not sure why a manufacturer would put a sticky label on a finished surface of plywood like this that would require that much effort to clean it off. But anyway, let's put some stain on this thing now, and then what I'm going to do is, like I said before, I'm going to stain this section right here. Let's get this away from there, and go around the lead weights. I'm going to keep the lead weights on there until I get the stain applied. and then I'll flip it over and I'll stain the other side just the same, and then once that's dried, I'll remove the weights and stain where the weights are at. It doesn't have to be pretty, you know, I mean, I just need to get a good coat of this on the surfaces of all the surfaces, the top, the bottom, and the sides. And then, well, I guess once it all dries, we'll see what happens. Like if this works, this is great. I'd like to have a nice flat piece of wood, but I'm not going to make people watch me do this. This is just tedious stuff, but when it's finished, I'll show it and, of course, explain what happened. So, okay, a day has gone by, and I have completely coated both sides of the base in maple plywood. And let's find out if anything happened here that's of interest. Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, I'm immediately seeing a rise here. That's holding this down. Wow. Holy cow. There's a kind of small bow in the center, but other than that, it's actually kind of flat. I would call that a success. So I think, you know, if any of you ever have the reason, whatever, to purchase any plywood, I would suggest that you coat it right away when you get it home. But that might be bad advice, because another carpenter had said that the first thing you should do with lumber when you bring it home from a hardware store is to let it acclimate to the environment or relax to your environmental conditions. But as you can see, I did that effectively, left it acclimate and then warped on me. So I guess he means acclimate it for a day or two and then coat it before it starts to warp. But apparently all wood warps. It must just be the nature of the beast. So I still have to do the coating on the sides, and I'm inclined to throw another coat on the surface of it again after I get the sides done. So there's progress being made, and then I'm going to cut out the base. I'll show you that in a little bit, and we're going to get it all mounted up onto the foam of the model railroad's benchwork. Hi again, and just a couple days later, it's been viciously cold outside, so I had to go out to the garage, and I'll show you why. I started, let me just add to that, I hesitated to go out to the garage because it was so cold. But anyway, I started cutting out the piece that I want to use for the base out of the plywood, this wonderful maple sheet of plywood. And it's very flat. I want you to see that. Look. So the shellac and the weights really did help. That doesn't preclude it from, you know, warping again, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, I'm going to cut out the section that I want to use for the foundation. And the reason why I'm giving this side note is, instead of just cutting it out, is because I started using this tool, and that was a fail. You know, it cut, I don't know if you can see this, but it cut down to about there. And for some reason, the wood grasps the blade so tightly, I can't cut. It's hard to get it out. So I had to step my game up. You know, typically you choose tools for the scale that you're working in. And so, you know, normally I would think this would be sufficient for HO scale and thin pieces of wood like this, but it's evidently thick enough that I had to, like I say, step the game up. So I'm gonna cut it out with my skill saw. This little item, by the way, once It once appeared in a previous episode when I repaired it. It was going back, I don't know, 2 years maybe. But it's back and it's going to do the job. I'm going to get this cut. And that's how it gets done. Oh, what a mess. Well, we're going to clean up. It's a mess. It's well worth it. I'd have never got that cut out with the other tool. Okay, so here's the fit of the two pieces. And, well, my plan is, at this point, I know I don't have any, I believe I'm going to need to use construction glue to bond the plastic to this stained wood surface, as I don't believe that wood glue is going to do that properly. So I got to make a run to the store anyway, so I'm going to get some of that construction glue when I'm there. Oh dear. Okay, now what's happening here was that I waited for the, well, I shouldn't say I waited for it to dry. I didn't wait for it to dry. I waited until it was pretty well set. I think I waited about 6 hours. And I came down and looked at it, and I noticed that the actual, this foundation part here was cupping up on either end, on both these sides. It was cupping up. So what I did was I squeezed in some more of this. It's called Loctite PL3. So it's construction adhesive, and I squeezed it into the gaps that were forming as it was pulling apart, and then I clamped the hell out of it to keep it from spreading anymore. And I wanted to just now take these clamps off and see if it's going to hold. Oh, good God, I cleaned the clamp. And I ran out of those clamps, so I had to use that thing. And well, there's still a bit of a, you might not be able to see it, but right along here is a slight rise or separation, if you will. And that's not going to be, it's not going to be perfect, but I think it'll suit me. So I also clamped it using this tool. Let's take it off and see what happens. Well, it's a lot better now with this adhesive stuck inside of there. It's holding it down. And let's check the flatness while I'm at it. Oh, it's dead flat. So far so good. I mean, I have to wait to make sure that this thing doesn't want to curl up more. I could have probably gotten a little bit more of the adhesive back into this corner, but hopefully it doesn't start blowing up. If it does, I'll give it the treatment. But so far as this goes, at this point, I'm very satisfied. So I will go ahead and mount this base on the foam and let you see where it belongs according to my track plan. So I've placed the two-stall engine house model on top of the foam for the model railroad benchwork. This is the upper level, and it's an approximately where it'll belong. And I started thinking about, what the elevation situation will be. How far into the foam do I need to recess this foundation? And I thought about it, and I realized that although like I said before, the two-stall engine house actually is the cornerstone, or it's the basis for the track work and the track plan. Started with this. The roundhouse is actually going to set the elevation for the yard. And so I think the next thing I need to do is to build the roundhouse before I set the elevation on the two-stall engine house so that they marry up. According to the track plan, so you can see this, these two tracks have to come back to some kind of orientation on the roundhouse. So the next thing I'm going to do, and then this will be the very next video, is I'm going to build this roundhouse kit. And the roundhouse kit's going to get set in its exact location according to the plan, as close as I can get it. And then that will then dictate the final permanent spot and elevation for this guy. And so all the rest of the track will just be a matter of laying it out. The only other thing that might be an issue with elevation was there's one part of the plan that was elevated so that hopper cars can dump coal. So anyway, we'll see how that works out. Well, I just heard that Dan Thorne went storming down to the roundhouse, and I believe he heard that there was an employee down there sleeping. Let's listen in and find out what's going on.
Hey,
You woke me up just so I can leave a like for this video?
well, you must think you're as tough as I am.
Well, who says we have to leave a like anyway?
On this road and for me. I'm Dan Thorne, and what I say goes around here. That means everybody, see?
Well, I hope that poor soul doesn't get fired just because he didn't leave a like.